The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today. Okay, Brooke, what do we got?
We have a question from our listener, Stephen from Akron, Ohio. And Stephen asks, so I guess the Epstein Files are about to be released. I see only one Republican voted no in the House. Yes. So is this going to amount to anything? Or is this just another political bullshit game that will distract the nation for a couple of weeks and then never amount to anything real? Mark, Scott?
Yes.
What do you think?
That's
another distraction?
That's an easy one. I think that's an easy one. Yes. And the guy that voted against was Clay Higgins from the great state of Louisiana.
Who I think I once read is actually mentally retarded. No, I'm not joking about that. Like his IQ was that low. I should look that up. I shouldn't say that, but I do remember reading it, and I remember the first time he kind of came into my consciousness, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And I don't know. I suppose he's like a successful son of somebody who, or a son of somebody successful, who got this position due to the family name or something along those lines. He voted pro-pedophile. I wonder how the people of Louisiana in his neighborhood feel about that.
Well, it wasn't only voted pro-pedophile, I mean, which is basically the vote. He was also complaining about the procedure. And that's the part that he was really hanging his hat on, which, and I'm truly not going to say he's pro-pedophile. The only reason for that is because how many times if you say, well, I don't support this, oh, you're anti-Semitic. They automatically come up with that. He did give some sort of explanation as to why he felt that this was a bad bill. He wants to, in fact, in his statement, he said, listen, I want to release him. There's no doubt. But the bill is so badly written that it causes its own problems on its face. We could take that for what it's worth from Representative Higgins, but that's basically where we stand with the representative of Louisiana, which is, I mean, and I can understand this in some instances simply because these guys write bills really badly. I mean, I've always said that most of them are lawyers, and if they were really good lawyers, they sure as hell wouldn't be in the House of Representatives. They make a lot more money being a really good lawyer, and they really do write it badly. And again, Clay Higgins' comment was that he thought that this might harm the way it was written, might hurt innocent people. And his quote was, "It abandons 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America. As written, this bill reveals and injures thousands of innocent people, witnesses, people who provide alibis, family members, etc." So I guess that's legit.
I mean, that was Mike Johnson's theory also.
Well, yeah.
And
it's a good one to hang your hat on.
and Representative Massey, tore that down. He said, read the bill. The bill is very clear about that. And we definitely took that into consideration. You also saw a lot of women getting up yesterday in front of TV cameras, except for Fox, oddly enough, and making speeches where they're more than willing to be transparent about the stories that they live through. And come hell or high water, they want justice. And so, I'm going to take Tom Massey and Ro Khanna, although I kind of wish that Tom Massey was the lead here and Ro Khanna would take a step back, because I think that this is more powerful when Republicans take the lead on it. And and I know Khanna wants to be president someday, but this is one that he really needed to take a back seat on. All the Democrats needed to take a back seat on and allow the Republicans who are willing to take the lead on it be the leaders. And we had four of them that could have done that. But Massey, by far, I mean, the opposite of Clay Higgins, I think he's probably the smartest person in Congress, all told. I mean, both houses. Really, really smart guy.
Yeah.
Crazy, but very smart guy.
And if we want to take a positive out of all this to the listeners out there, 427-1. How many times do we see the United States Congress have that lopsided, a vote? I mean, it's almost unheard of.
And Trump gave them permission to do that, right? I mean, Trump said, vote for it, and only Clay Higgins kind of disobeyed him and voted against it.
Right.
Take that for what you will, but I really think that the bigger thing here is that this was going to go down whether Trump was behind it or not. Like this, they were going to do this, and may not have been unanimous or almost unanimous, but it was going to happen. And I think he, decided at the last minute that he was going to get behind it, which is really ridiculous because he could have just said, okay, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to tell Pam, release everything, get it all out there. Instead, his statement was they're going to get everything that they're legally entitled to, which seems like wriggle room to me.
Yeah.
And there'll be more delaying tactics in other ways. For example, Pam can open up a case against somebody, and then they say, well, this is evidence in the case, so we can't reveal it to the public. And so it'll all be hidden. But I do think that this was the one issue that we've ever found where normally loyal Trump publicans went against him. And, it's a good thing to see. I think maybe there's a fever breaking somewhere, and Trump, the pedophile who as a 40-something-year-old man decided to buy a teenage beauty pageant and start a teenage modeling agency, may like that. Those chickens are coming home to roost, and it's not going to be a comfortable thing for him. But we'll see.
Yeah, we will. And, to Stephen, the only thing I could say is this is like a lot of things. And I was actually watching a show last night on the History Channel or National Geographic. And of course, they build it up. We're going to find out about what's going on in this pyramid. And then after watching it for an hour and a half, they say the jury is still out. You're basically looking at the same thing here. The nation will pay attention to it. As Scott pointed out, there's going to be all sorts of wrangling as far as what we can release because, now it's an ongoing investigation, blah, 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 blah. And you're not going to find out anything. You got a better chance of finding out what's actually going on at Area 51 than you've got here, because I'm going to guarantee you, and this is just an opinion, there's a whole bunch of people that are named in those documents that are still in power that are going to bury this as far as they possibly can. A lot of people are saying today, well, Trump obviously is not in it because he's the one that said, I don't care, go ahead and release it. I've done nothing wrong. Well, that's an argument. But then again, I don't think you're going to get anything definitive from either the Congress or definitely not from the DOJ about any of these. The thing to keep an eye on in this is, and as Scott said, there's going to be ongoing investigations as names come up. Who do they target? Will they be targeting both Republicans and Democrats? Or will they just be targeting Democrats? Because Trump came out and gave a list of people he thought should be targeted. And there wasn't a Republican in the bunch. So, how are they going to frame this out? How are they going to conduct themselves in this investigation? I think that's as equally as important as the documents that are out there. And rather than worrying about what the documents say, the thing to really listen to is what do the victims say. That's the important thing. And I think I agree with Scott. I think these victims are more than willing to come out and make their voices heard. This is kind of like the Me Too movement of children, with the powerful as the the oppressor. So to me, those are the people to really listen to, and how much the opposition tries to make their stories to challenge the credibility of their stories, I guess I'll say. And if we start seeing that, that tells you a lot about the people that are doing that. That absolutely does. Um, so
Well, I'll tell you this though. Again, Trump doesn't need to have them go through
correct.
this process, right? He could, if he really feels that he's innocent, he certainly could have at any time up until yesterday said, you know what, we need to release. I have nothing to hide, so we're going to release everything, and Pam, release them.
Yep.
I mean, he's done that before, right? I mean, he's gonna lose if he hasn't already lost some of the cases that Pam Bondi or whatever that other woman's name is, who he hired as a U.S. attorney in Virginia to prosecute James Comey and Letitia James and I think then Congressman, now Senator Adam Schiff, that they're going to, that he's got that power. He's got that ability to tell them to do that, and they do it. They bring the cases. He could have done that. And I mean, it was Trump not aware that the first victim of this whole thing, well, other than the prince, is Larry Summers, right? The former president of Harvard, the former, I believe he was Treasury Secretary for Bill Clinton, I think it was, who, has since this came out, has lost everything that he had. I mean, I think he still has his teaching position at Harvard, but I think that's in jeopardy now, because I think Elizabeth Warren demanded that Harvard fire him. He's already been fired from some of the other gigs that he had, and he said he's going to step back from public commitments to try to rebuild trust and repair the relationships with people who are close to him, not the general public. So I think that it's being in these files is not a comfortable position to be in, and it's clear to me anyway that Trump's in those files.
Yeah.
Or he would not have fought this hard this long, and his turnaround here is not proof that he's not in the file. It's proof that he has given up that fight, and he's going to take up the fight in some other way, which will likely be by opening up a case against somebody else and then saying, we can't, we would love to release the rest of this information, but we can't because there's an ongoing case.
Right. And, I think one of the things to really try not to run down the rabbit hole on this one. I mean, I was watching some of the late night, pundits doing the jokes, Stephen Colbert, something about, blowing Bubba. The only Bubba we know is Bill Clinton. I mean, don't read too much into it. Their facts are facts. And this is one of those things that, kind of worries me in the sense that we are so prone to just accepting, because we're being told reality does not exist and there's alternate realities, and what you see is not what you really see, or what you feel is not what you really feel. We have a tendency to accept these, I don't know, QAnon type, narratives that come out about that without using critical and analytical thinking. And I think that is one of the great dangers of this. You're going to hear from both sides. Both sides are going to frame this to the audience that's listening to them. And don't be that audience. I say that to the Fox viewers. I say that to the CNN viewers and the MSNBC viewers, and I can't say it to the Newsmax and to the OAN viewers, because you've lost your minds anyway. There's no coming back from that. But we've got to stay. Those are the moderate middle, those in the center. We have got to look at this and evaluate as much, because we aren't going to know very much about what the content is. I don't think you're going to find a lot of content that's going to be specific, that we can draw hard fact conclusions to. But you're going to hear a lot of noise where people are going to tell you what these things mean. And that is the danger. And that is the danger that we as a nation and as a society here in the United States really is starting to fall under, where we just, okay, well, such and such on CNN said it, therefore it must be true. And we used to say the same thing 3 years ago, 5 years ago, about if you listen to Hannity. So we've got to avoid that kind of falling into that rabbit hole and falling into that trap where we start giving up our power as an electorate, as thinking human beings, and giving up that power to people that really all they're trying to do is manipulate you. And that's going to come from both sides. Let me get that perfectly straight. This is not just going to come out of the Republicans. The Democrats are going to do the same damn thing because that's the strategy. And unfortunately, it works. So we got to make sure that we stop having that kind of strategy used against us and it working. And I think, Stephen, we all want to know what's going to go on. I think that we agree that we probably won't. At least not in our lifetime. It probably is just going to be, as you put, political bullshit for a while. And let's also remember the American populace's attention span isn't very long. How much do you hear about Ukraine anymore? Really hear about it like we used to? How much have you heard about Gaza in the last, say, month? Really, compared to what we were hearing about it. I mean, all these important things that come up that were important a month, 2 months ago, it's left the collective memory of the populace because it's not in the current news cycle. So
just as a response to that, and I agree with you for the most part, but there's something that you said that really struck me, which is, we're gonna get tied up in the sex and the sex part of this.
Yes.
And that's not the most important part of it.
No, it's not.
It is the sex part of this is disgusting and criminal, and everybody who's involved in it needs to pay a price for being involved in it. Okay. But there's more to this than I think beyond the sex that is really, really important and really damaging to the president. And that is the sort of triangular relationship between Donald Trump, Semyon Mogilevich, and Jeffrey Epstein. And, the fact that both Epstein and Trump were money launderers to the Russian mob should not be lost on anyone. And this is the part that the Republicans, I think, are going to come to regret this vote, because the stuff that went on, right up until, at least, if not continuing to 2016 between Trump and the Russian mob is really, really dangerous stuff that should really cause concern for everyone. And that is that, both Epstein and Trump were bidding on properties to turn around and sell at enormous profits, way beyond the value of the properties, to Russian oligarchs / mobsters who were interested in laundering their money and found out that real estate was the best way to do that. And the head of the Russian mob just happens to be Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin, reportedly the most wealthy man in the world right now, with the incredible wealth that he has amassed as the top of the pyramid of the Russian mafia, with his job in the Kremlin just being his sort of day job and not his real job. And you see Epstein's name popping into a lot of these documents, that have been released. And he's talking about various Russian oligarchs like Rybalov, who have ties to Mogilevich and Firtash and others. You have to kind of bring in at some point or another the what's his name? Mark, help me out. The guy who ran his campaign, who
there's been so many.
Yeah.
We'll get it.
Who went to prison and then was pardoned by Trump. Jesus, how could I forget his name?
Manafort.
There you go. Manafort. Right. Manafort, who was...
Well, there were so many of them, Scott. I just looked it up, and there's like 7 names that come up because they get fired, and try to pick out which one. And then when you said, well, the guy that went to jail, well, okay, Manafort, Bannon went to jail.
And by the way, and Bannon is definitely a part of this cabal here. And was a part owner of Cambridge Analytica, which had a lot to do with getting Trump elected the first time. And it was a sort of a Russian mob / Silicon Valley joint venture that was meant to influence people, and in 2016 did. But the connections between the Trump people and Epstein. And by the way, when, Bannon's a great example of this, right? Because we know that Trump said, oh, I'm kicking Bannon out. I don't want anything to do with that guy anymore. He's dirty. But that they stayed in touch. And he did the same thing with Manafort, right? And then Manafort got pardoned, and, Trump is going to go, well, I cut ties with that guy a long time ago. This is a fairly typical Trump thing, which he also did with Epstein, who now the emails reveal he had Thanksgiving dinner with in 2017 when he was already the president of the United States. So it really does seem like there's a lot of connections here to some pretty shady characters. And that's not what the Republicans are voting for. The Republicans are voting for the sex because they got all wound up with the QAnon thing, right? Which was that, Trump was supposed to protect everybody from and be the fighter who exposes the pizza parlor, Pizzagate, and exposes the pedophile ring and the adrenochrome and all, as crazy as QAnon got. What it really comes down to is that the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world really did think that Trump was going to expose the powerful elites and their relationships to young children. And they feel betrayed because it turns out that he's one of them. But that's not the most important part of this story. And the most important part of this story needs to be told.
And that's the problem we're going to run into, Scott, I think. That's why I say, careful what you pay attention to on the news entertainment, because they're going to focus on the sex. Because like anybody will ever tell you, sex sells.
Yeah.
And they're going to focus on it. So all these things that you brought up, which are absolutely valid points, you're probably going to have to get that from somewhere else other than the mainstream media of the United States, because they're going to do exactly as expected. They're going to basically focus on the sex, and that's it. And when there's so much more here, and in giving a little bit of a shout out to the American people, what Scott just outlined here, you really have to really critically and analytically look at this stuff and make those connections. And there's so many people in the United States that just simply do not have that capacity to do that. And that's what we need to start really focusing on. Making people understand. I know that I could be sitting out at the Oasis here tonight with a beer with a few of the friends, and I could explain everything that Scott just said to me. And that is, they're not stupid people. They voted for Trump, but other than that, they're really not stupid people. This is all going to go over their head. This is going to, what are you talking about? And granted, the first thing they're going to say is, well, Fox News didn't say that. Well, Fox News doesn't say a lot of things. But even if you lay it out in front of them, they are going to be looking at you like you got 5 heads. What does any of this mean? How do you make those connections? Because it's complex. And I think that's one of the issues for us, for our listener that wrote in. That is why this will go away. Because the real underlying problems, as Scott has outlined here, are so complex that the average American simply just doesn't want to take the time or put the effort in to be able to really look into this stuff. And they're going to be inundated with the sex, and that's what they're going to stick with.
Could be. What a shame. What a shame if that's true.
So I wondered, what types of distractions do you have? Any concepts of what? Because if Trump feels that he's cornered, it seems to me he's going to be worse and more malign than he already is. And the victims of all this, where are their voices with all these distractions and with all the Trump is already saying, well, we have to look into open an investigation into Clinton and into Summers and to, I don't remember who else it was, but they were all Democrats.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Brooke, you're right. And the fact is that you're right. These voices, and you're going to hear these voices. And it really goes to the point that Scott made. Their voices aren't about Manafort. Their voices aren't about Bannon. Their voices aren't about Putin. Their voices aren't about all the underlining stuff that Scott outlined. Their voices are going to be about the sex. And the people that you would talk about the stuff that Scott was talking about, they're not talking. They're not talking. So their voice is going to be heard because you're going to get that one side of the media that's going to put them front and center, and they're willing, and I'm happy that they're willing, sort of like the Me Too movement was. They're happy to be front and center. And I think that's great. But the fact is their entire focus is going to be on the sex. And all of this other underlying stuff, which should be, I'm not going to say, from a human perspective, it's not as equally as important as the tragedy that happened to these people, to these young ladies that were abused. Not even close from a humanistic standpoint. But from a national standpoint, national security standpoint, this other stuff, which is all underlying, underneath the surface there, that's important stuff. And it's important stuff that should be looked into.
Absolutely. And look, the one thing that gets people's attention almost as much as sex is money. And the amounts of money that we're talking about here are going to be staggering, probably. Yep. So like JP Morgan moved $50 million in payments over a 10-year period for Manafort.
Yep.
Working to launder money and do other corrupt stuff with his pro-Russian political friends in Ukraine, for example. I mean, the ties between, Eastern European politicians and mobsters is so tight. And I think, we're going to see a lot of the banks, really big banks, being involved, and the sums of money that are staggering to people like you and me, being involved in mobsters, sex rings, politicians, and hopefully that can capture the attention of the public just as much as the sex certainly will.
Hopefully
but
so.
It remains to be seen.
That's true. Okay.
Yep. So, Stephen, I do hope that we answered your question. Very important question. And it may not amount to anything real now, as Mark and Scott said, certainly probably not in our lifetimes. We don't know, of course, how old you are. If you're decades younger than we are, you may learn quite a bit more.
But it's Stephen, is it? So
Stephen from Akron.
Akron, Ohio. Just
Akron.
To sum it up in a sentence, you're wondering if there's going to be distractions from the sex. The sex is the distraction. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So we may not see Stephen, but you may. So thank you again for your question.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.